It all started on a Tuesday evening, when the plumbing in our house decided to stage a mutiny. A gushing pipe in the kitchen had turned the floor into a mini swimming pool, and Rachel, my wife of 10 years, was laughing as she tried to catch the spray with a Tupperware lid. That laugh, melodic and carefree, was one of the reasons I fell in love with her. But as I mopped up the mess, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't the laugh itself, it was how rare it had become. Later that night, as I lay in bed scrolling aimlessly on my tablet, a notification popped up on the neighborhood app. It was a photo from Mr. and Mrs. Dalton's anniversary party, which Rachel had attended solo just 3 nights ago, the party of the year. The caption read. Curious, I clicked on it, eager to see how our neighbors' over-the-top soiree had turned out. My wife was there, all right, front and center in the third photo. She wore a black dress that I didn't even know she owned, looking stunning and radiant. But it wasn't her outfit that made me pause, it was the man she was standing with. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and unfamiliar. His hand rested casually but possessively on her lower back. They were smiling like old friends sharing an inside joke. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Rachel worked with a lot of people I didn't know, clients, contractors, colleagues. But something about the way she leaned into him, her arm grazing his, made my stomach tighten. The kind of ease between them wasn't born out of professional camaraderie. Still, I didn't say a word. I saved the photo, marked it in the back of my mind as something to ask about later, and tried to let it go. But later, as I lay there in the dark listening to her even breathing, I realized the feeling wasn't going away. It clung to me like a second skin, demanding to be acknowledged. He had no idea that image was the first domino to fall, a tiny flick that would topple the carefully constructed life we had built together. The next morning, the photo was still on my mind, but life didn't give me the luxury of sitting around to mull it over. Rachel was rushing out the door for work, handing me a quick kiss on the cheek as she juggled her coffee mug and car keys. Love you, she called over her shoulder as she disappeared into the garage. I didn't answer. It wasn't deliberate, just instinct. Something about her breezy departure felt like a script she had memorized too well. I told myself I was being paranoid and dove into my own workday, juggling calls, emails, and deadlines. But that photo stayed lodged in my head like a splinter I couldn't reach. Around lunchtime, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to drop by Rachel's office unannounced, a simple gesture, under the guise of a spontaneous lunch date. She worked at a high-end design firm, the kind of place that had modern furniture and more plants than employees. When I walked into the reception area, the woman at the front desk, Paige, looked surprised to see me. "Isin." "Hi," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "What brings you here?" "Thought I'd steal Rachel for lunch." "Is she free?" Paige's smile wavered. "Oh, she's not in the office right now. She had a meeting with a client." I glanced at my watch. "It's barely noon." "That's unusual for her, isn't it?" "She's been really busy lately," Paige said quickly. "You know how it is." The way she avoided my eyes told me she was lying, or at least hiding something. Paige had always been chatty during my previous visits, but now she seemed nervous, her hands fidgeting with a stack of papers on her desk. He decided to push a little further. "Do you know where the meeting is?" Paige hesitated. No, sorry. I just know she left about an hour ago." I nodded, pretending to accept her answer, but as I walked out of the office, my mind was racing. Something wasn't adding up. Rachel's job rarely took her out of the office during the day, and when it did, she usually mentioned it. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo from the Daltons' party. The man in the picture had a certain confidence about him, relaxed, comfortable. It wasn't someone who had just happened to stand next to Rachel for a photo. They knew each other. I decided to find out who he was. That evening, Rachel came home later than usual. He heard her car pull into the garage just as I was finishing up dinner for the kids. She walked in, her heels clicking against the tile floor, and gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "The meeting ran long." "Where was it?" he asked casually, sliding a plate of spaghetti onto the table. She paused, caught off guard by either question. "Oh, just at the client's office downtown." "What client?" Rachel frowned slightly. "Ethan, why the sudden interest?" "It was just a routine meeting." "I was in the area earlier," I said, ignoring her deflection. "Thought he'd stop by your office for lunch." "Why he said you were out." Her expression flickered, just for a moment, but long enough for me to notice. "I didn't think you'd drop by," she said, her tone light but with an edge of defensiveness. "You sold be called." "Yeah, maybe I should have," I said, watching her carefully. Rachel changed the subject quickly, steering the conversation toward the kids, school projects and an upcoming family barbecue. He played along, but my mind was elsewhere. After dinner, when she went upstairs to take a shower, I took a chance. Grabbing her purse from the counter, I rifled through it until I found her planner. Flipping through the pages, I looked for any mention of the meeting she claimed to have attended. There was nothing. In fact, the entire day's schedule was blank. I put the planner back and stared at the counter, my heart pounding. Something was definitely wrong. The next day, I decided to follow up on the photo. Using a reverse image search, I hoped to find some clue about the man standing with Rachel. It didn't take long. Within minutes, I found a link to a local business website, a high-end architecture firm. The man's name was Lucas Bennett, and he was one of their senior partners. A quick scan of his profile revealed that he was married, with 2 kids, and had a long list of professional accolades. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was his connection to Rachel. I called her office again, pretending to be a potential client, and asked if Rachel had been working with anyone from Lucas Bennett's firm. The receptionist's answer confirmed my suspicions. "Yes, she's been collaborating with Mr. Bennett on a couple of projects recently." When Rachel came home that evening, I tried to act normal, but it was like walking on a tightrope. Every word she said felt like it carried a double meaning. Later that night, while she slept, I logged into our shared bank account and combed through her transactions. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. There it was, a series of charges from upscale restaurants and boutique hotels, none of which she had ever mentioned to me. Each one was a pin on the map of her betrayal. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I decided to see for myself. The next time she said she had a late meeting, I followed her. Sitting in my car outside the restaurant, I watched as she walked in. A few minutes later, Lucas Bennett joined her. They sat at a table near the window, talking, laughing, leaning in close. He took a photo. There was no denying it now. Driving home that night, I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. The woman I had trusted implicitly was keeping secrets, big ones. He parked in the driveway and sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Rachel was still awake when I walked in. She smiled at me, but this time, I didn't smile back. He knew the truth, and soon, so would she. Rachel was sitting on the couch when I walked into the living room that night. She had her legs tucked underneath her, scrolling through her phone like nothing in the world was wrong. Seeing her there, so casual, so utterly unaffected, made my stomach churn. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her, wondering if she could sense the storm that was about to break. "Hey," I said finally, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, startled. "Hey, everything okay?" "You're home later than usual." He ignored her question and walked to the recliner across from the couch. Sitting down, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "We need to talk." Rachel raised an eyebrow, her expression wary. Sure. Bats up. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Swiping to the photo I had taken of her and Lucas at the restaurant, I turned the screen toward her. "What's this?" he asked, my tone as even as I could manage. Rachel froze, her eyes locked on the screen. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then, like a switch had been flipped, she forced a laugh. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice unnaturally light. "That's not the question I asked, Rachel," I said, my voice tightening. "What is this?" She glanced at the photo again, then back at me. "It's just a work dinner," she said, shrugging. "Lucas and I have been collaborating on a project. You know how it is." "Really?" he said, leaning back in my chair. "Because it doesn't look like a work dinner to me. It looks a lot more personal than that." Rachel rolled her eyes, an edge of irritation creeping into her voice. "You're being ridiculous, Ethan. You don't know what you think you saw, but I promise you it's nothing." He stared at her, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. "I followed you, Rachel. I saw you laughing with him, leaning into him. I've seen the charges on our credit card, restaurants, hotels. Don't lie to me." Her face paled, the irritation replaced by a flicker of panic. "You followed me?" "Yes," I said, my voice rising. "And I don't feel the least bit guilty about it, because clearly, you've been hiding something." Rachel stood up, crossing her arms over her chest. "This is insane. You're spying on me now? Do you even hear yourself? That's not normal, Ethan." "No, Rachel, that's not normal is sneaking around behind your husband's back," I shot back. "So stop deflecting and tell me the truth. Are you sleeping with him?" She opened her mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. Instead, her face crumpled, and she sank back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "God, Rachel," I said, my voice shaking. "How could you do this to me? To ese? To our family." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice muffled. "Sorry," he repeated, standing up. "You're sorry? That's it? Do you have any idea what you've done? How long, Rachel? How long has this been going on?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "A few months," she admitted. "It didn't mean anything, Ethan. I swear. It was just, I don't know, a stupid mistake." "A mistake?" he said, laughing bitterly. "A mistake is forgetting to turn off the oven, Rachel. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice, a deliberate, calculated choice to betray me. I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't plan this. It just happened." He shook my head, pacing the room. "That's not good enough. You don't just, accidentally, end up having an affair, Rachel. You made a decision. Every step of the way, you chose this." "I was lonely," she said quietly. "You're always so busy with work, with the kids." He felt invisible. "Invisible?" he repeated, turning to face her. "You're telling me this is my fault? That I pushed you into his arms?" "No," she said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying. It didn't feel like you saw me anymore." He laughed again, the sound harsh and bitter. "So your solution was to jump into bed with another man? That's how you decided to fix things?" Rachel flinched at my words but didn't respond. "I can't believe this," I said, shaking my head. "I've been killing myself trying to build a life for us, and this is how you repay me? By running off with some guy from work?" "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, then why do it? he demanded. She didn't answer, and the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, I spoke again, my voice cold and flat. I want you to leave. Rachel's head snapped up. What? You heard me, I said. Pack a bag and go. I don't care where. Just get out. Ethan, please, she said, standing up. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it. No, I said, cutting her off. You made your choice, Rachel. And now I'm making mine. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me, as if trying to decide whether to fight or give in. Then, without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. I heard the sound of her footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the bedroom door, the rustling of clothes being packed. When she came back down, she had a small suitcase in her hand. I'll go to my sister's, she said quietly, avoiding my gaze. I didn't respond. I couldn't. As the door closed behind her, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. My marriage, the life I had worked so hard to build, was in pieces, and I had no idea how to put it back together. The night Rachel left, the house felt like a void. There was no anger left in me, just a cold emptiness that wrapped itself around every room. I spent hours sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the screen of my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I scrolled through photos, emails, and every bit of evidence I had gathered of her betrayal. This wasn't going to end with her walking away scot-free. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg her to fix what she'd broken. No, Rachel had chosen her path, and now I was going to make her regret it in a way she couldn't ignore. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. By 9 de la mañana the next morning, I had an appointment scheduled for later that day. I wasn't a vindictive person by nature, but Rachel had rewritten the rules. He wanted everything on the table, the house, custody of the kids, every last dollar of her salary that could be garnished for child support. Before leaving for the lawyer's office, I took out Rachel's work laptop. She had left it behind in her haste, and while I didn't have the password, I had tools. With a bit of effort, I bypassed the login screen and accessed her files. What I found confirmed what I already suspected: this wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown relationship. There were emails between her and Lucas that made my stomach churn. Plans for weekend getaways, conversations about keeping things discreet, and even an email where she joked about her meetings being her escape from real life. I forwarded everything to myself, closed the laptop, and walked out the door. The lawyer was ruthless, a steely-eyed woman who listened to my story without a flicker of emotion. When I finished, she asked one question: how far are you willing to go? All the way, I said. By the time I left her office, we had a plan. Step 1 was filing for divorce and requesting an emergency custody hearing for the kids. Rachel wasn't a bad mother, but her actions had jeopardized the stability of our family, and I wasn't going to let her get away with pretending otherwise. Step 2 was addressing her relationship with Lucas. It wasn't just a man who had slept with my wife, he was a married man with a reputation to protect. My lawyer suggested reaching out to his wife, but I decided to handle that part myself. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat down with a glass of whiskey and dialed the number I had found in one of Rachel's emails. Hello, a woman's voice answered. Hi, is this Emily Bennett? He asked, keeping my tone polite. Yes, was this? My name is Ethan, I said. I'm Rachel's husband. We've never met, but I think we need to talk about your husband, Lucas. There was a long pause. What about him? I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but I believe Lucas has been having an affair with my wife. The line went silent. For a moment, I thought she might have hung up, but then she spoke, her voice trembling. How do you know? I have emails, photos, and other proof, I said. I can send them to you if you like. Yes, she said quickly. Please. He sent everything while we were still on the phone. By the time she opened the email, she was crying. I had my suspicions, she admitted. But I never thought. I'm sorry, I said. I know how much this hurts. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm divorcing her, I said bluntly. What about you? She didn't answer, and I didn't push. We exchanged numbers and agreed to stay in touch, but as I hung up, I felt a grim satisfaction. Lucas wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed either. The next step was at work. Rachel's company had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially ones that could cause a conflict of interest. I printed out the most incriminating emails and sent them anonymously to her HR department. I didn't know what would come of it, but I hoped it would at least force her to face some consequences. Finally, I decided to hit her where it would hurt most, her image. Rachel had always prided herself on being well respected in our social circle. I carefully crafted a message explaining why we were divorcing and sent it to a select group of friends and family. I didn't embellish or add unnecessary drama, I simply laid out the facts. By the end of the week, Rachel's world was crumbling. Emily had confronted Lucas, and their marriage was on the brink of collapse. Rachel had been called into HR for a meeting about her conduct, and our friends had started to distance themselves from her. She called me, crying, begging me to stop. Ethan, please, she said. You're ruining my life. You ruined mine first, I said coldly. Now you get to live with the fallout. She tried to argue, tried to shift the blame, but I hung up on her. I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. This wasn't about revenge for its own sake, it was about making her face the consequences of her actions. For the first time in days, I slept soundly that night. Rachel had chosen to destroy our marriage, and now, she was seeing just how costly that choice would be. Rachel showed up at the house 2 days later. It was early in the evening, just after they finished dinner with the kids. They had gone upstairs to do homework, and I was sitting in the living room going over documents from my lawyer. The knock on the door was quiet, almost hesitant. I opened it to find her standing there, looking disheveled and far from the polished woman I was used to. She wasn't wearing makeup, her hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Can we talk? She asked softly. I stepped aside to let her in, not because I felt sorry for her, but because there were still things left unsaid, and I was ready to get it over with. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I sat across from her, keeping the coffee table between us. You look awful, I said bluntly. She flinched but didn't argue. I haven't been sleeping, she admitted. That's not really my problem anymore, I said. Rachel looked down, fiddling with the strap of her bag. I deserve that, she said after a moment. Ethan, I came here because I need to apologize. For everything. For lying to you, for betraying your trust, for hurting our family. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. What do you want from me, Rachel? Forgiveness? A second chance? Because neither of those are on the table. No, she said quickly. I know I don't deserve either of those things. I need you to understand why I did it. Why you cheated. I said, my voice sharp. I don't think there is any explanation that will make it okay. I'm not trying to justify it, she said, her voice cracking. I just want you to know that it wasn't because of anything you did. You're a good husband, Ethan. A great father. This wasn't about you. He let out a bitter laugh. You're right, Rachel. It wasn't about me. It was about you. About how selfish and cowardly you are. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. You had problems? Fine. Everyone has problems. But instead of talking to me, instead of working on our marriage, you ran to another man. You lied to my face, Rachel. Over and over. And now you want to sit here and tell me it wasn't about me? I was scared, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt like we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. Lucas made me feel wanted. Wanted? He repeated, my anger boiling over. I wanted you, Rachel. He married you. He built a life with you. What more could you possibly have needed? She started crying then, sobbing into her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the emails, the lies, and the way she had so easily betrayed me, and any sympathy I might have felt evaporated. You don't get to play the victim here, I said coldly. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Rachel wiped her eyes, taking a shaky breath. I know I can't fix this, she said. I know eBay lost you. But I want to make things right for the kids. They deserve better than this. For once, we agree, I said. That's why eBay already filed for full custody. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. Full custody? Isin, no. Please. They need both of us. They needed both of us before you destroyed our family, I shot back. You don't get to use them as a way to cling to the life you threw away. Ella fight you on this, she said, her voice shaking. I won't let you take them away from me. Good luck with that, I said, standing up. eBay got the best lawyer in the city, and plenty of evidence to prove you're unfit. Let's see how well your affair holds up in court. Rachel stood too, her face pale. Isin, please. Don't do this to them. Ella do whatever it takes to make this easier for them. Just, don't take them away from me. He stared at her for a long moment, weighing her words. As much as I hated her for what she had done, I couldn't deny that the kids loved her. They deserved stability, not a bitter custody battle. I'm not doing this to hurt the kids, I said finally. But you're going to have to earn back their trust, just like you'll have to earn back any chance of co-parenting with me. I will, she said quickly. Ella do whatever it takes. Then prove it, I said, my voice hard. Get your life together. Own up to what you've done, and stop making excuses. Until then, don't expect anything from me. Rachel nodded, her tears flowing freely now. Thank you, she said. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. Don't thank me, I said, walking to the door. This isn't it for you. It's for them. She followed me to the door, hesitating as I opened it. Isin, she said, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. For everything. He didn't respond. He just closed the door behind her, locking it with a sense of finality. As I stood there in the silence, I felt a strange sense of relief. The conversation had been painful, but it was also the closure I needed. Rachel was out of my life, and now I could focus on rebuilding what she had broken. On my terms, and for my kids. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, long nights with the kids, and moments of reflection. I threw myself into the divorce proceedings with single-minded determination, documenting every detail of Rachel's infidelity, every financial misstep she had taken, and every lie she had told. My lawyer, true to her word, was relentless. Rachel, for her part, didn't put up much of a fight. Maybe she knew there was no point, or maybe she just didn't have the energy. Either way, the divorce moved faster than I expected. Within a month, we had reached a settlement. I would keep the house, primary custody of the kids, and the Leon's share of our joint savings. Rachel would get visitation rights and the opportunity to rebuild her life, though I made it clear she wouldn't be doing it at my expense. It wasn't a clean break, though. Divorce never is. The kids were understandably confused and hurt. He sat them down one evening after school to explain what was happening, careful to avoid laying the blame too heavily on Rachel. Your mom and I, we're not going to be together anymore, I said, my voice steady but soft. Sarah, my oldest, stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. Why? She asked. What happened? It's complicated, I said, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes, grown-ups make mistakes. And sometimes, those mistakes mean that they can't stay together. Did Mom do something? She pressed, her voice trembling. I hesitated, but lying wasn't an option. Yes, I said simply. But she still loves you both very much. This don't change how much she cares about you. Daniel, my youngest, sat quietly, his brow furrowed. Are we going to have to move? He asked, his voice small. No, I said quickly. This is your home, and it's not going anywhere. You'll still see your mom, and things will be different, but we'll get through this together. The conversation ended with tears and hugs, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. They were trying to process something far bigger than their world had prepared them for, and it broke my heart to know I couldn't shield them from it. Despite everything, I was determined to give them as much stability as possible. I rearranged my work schedule to be home when they needed me, made a point of attending every soccer game and parent-teacher meeting, and even learned how to braid Sarah's hair, a task I had always left to Rachel. Rachel, to her credit, tried to make amends. She showed up for her scheduled visitations, stayed involved in the kids' lives, and even started attending therapy. She apologized to them, though I didn't press for details about what she said. That was between her and them. For me, though, forgiveness wasn't on the horizon. Not yet, anyway. One afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, I found an old box of letters and photos from the early years of our marriage. For a moment, I considered throwing it all away, but something stopped me. Instead, I sat down on the concrete floor and sifted through the memories. There was a photo of us on our honeymoon, smiling on a beach. A letter Rachel had written me on our first anniversary, filled with promises of a future we never quite reached. Looking at those artifacts of a happier time, I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of closure. The woman in those photos and letters wasn't the same person who had betrayed me. She was someone I had loved deeply, and while that love was gone, the memories remained. It wasn't easy, but I started to let go of the anger. It wasn't for Rachel's sake, it was for mine. Holding on to it would only keep me stuck in the past, and I owed it to myself and the kids to move forward. I joined a local support group for single parents, where I met others who had been through similar experiences. Talking to them helped me see that I wasn't alone, that life could go on even after such a devastating betrayal. I also started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I took up running again, something I hadn't done since before the kids were born, and even signed up for a half marathon. One evening, as I was tucking Sarah into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Her question caught me off guard, but I nodded without hesitation. "Yeah, sweetheart," I said. "We're going to be more than okay." And for the first time since the whole ordeal began, I believed it. The divorce was finalized a few weeks later. Rachel and I had one final meeting with our lawyers to sign the papers. When it was over, she pulled me aside and said, "Ethan, I just want you to know. I'm sorry. For everything." I nodded. "I know you are," I said. "But sorry don't change what happened. All we can do now is focus on the kids and move on." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. For being a good dad. For not turning them against me." "I didn't do it for you," I said simply. She left after that, and I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were a new beginning. I focused on being the best father I could be, on rebuilding my life one day at a time. And slowly, things started to fall into place. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know this much: I'm stronger than I thought I was. My kids are resilient, and our little family, while not what it once was, is still full of love. And that's enough for me. For now, it's enough.